Cold, brutal, endless. That's how Russian planners imagine winter on the Eastern Front. A season that should slow Ukraine, freeze the countryside solid, and hand Moscow the oxygen it needs to push forward. But here's the twist. Despite the headlines, despite the noise from official briefings, Russia's winter offensive is already coughing, wheezing, and collapsing under the weight of its own promises. This isn't a feel-good fairy tale, it's an attrition story, a logistics story, a deception story. And the truth is written in railheads, refineries, casualty ledgers, and the stubborn geography of Donbass. You've probably heard Moscow's line, advances along the entire front, new thrusts towards key towns, the sense that one final shove will topple Ukraine's defenses. On December 9th, Russia's top general trumpeted fresh gains and an encirclement push around Myrnohrad, with claims of progress bleeding over from nearby Pokrovsk. Kyiv immediately disputed the picture. That pattern, loud claims, quiet reality, has become a motif, and it's exactly where the collapse begins. The sound is loudest when the engine is running out of fuel. To understand why this offensive is faltering, we need to rewind the war's logic. Russia's original war aims demanded the annexation of all of Donetsk and Luhansk, and the forcing of Ukraine into military submission. Goals that require more than tactical nibbles. They require operational breakthroughs, encirclements, and rail-cutting drives. Even Moscow's own supporting narratives concede that without taking the Donbass decisively, the political objective remains unfinished. That's the context winter was supposed to fix. It hasn't. What we're watching instead is a campaign that bleeds manpower to move the line by meters and field salvos of cheap drones to terrorize cities, rather than to open doors for armor. Consider the attrition math. British Defense Intelligence has put Russia's cumulative killed and wounded since 2022 well over the million mark, a ghastly indicator that outpaces any gains on the map. Even as Moscow proposes a new medal for the often overlooked and horrific duty of retrieving bodies from combat zones, a macabre symbol of the war's human cost. The messaging cannot conceal the hemorrhage. When the home front is inventing honors for corpse recovery, it's not because the plan is going great. Independent Russian outlet Mediazona has tracked another grim data point. By early December, courts across Russia had received tens of thousands of applications from families seeking to declare soldiers dead or missing, an administrative wave that mirrors battlefield reality. Paperwork doesn't win wars, but it does leave a trail. And this trail suggests a scale of loss the propaganda can't tidy up. Attrition this steep is not a speed bump. It's a structural limit on how far an offensive can go before it stalls under its own weight. Now zoom out to the sustaining energy of war, fuel. Ukraine's long-range strike campaign has made Russia's oil refining network a punching bag. A quiet but decisive line of effort that erodes the very thing winter offensives feast on. Without reliable refining throughput, you can still fire artillery, but moving mechanized columns across frozen steppe becomes riskier, leaner, and more fragile. That degradation is cumulative, and it shows up on the battlefield as shorter pushes, fewer sustained surges, and increased dependence on expendable drones instead of fuel-hungry armor. Winter makes the ground harder. Ukrainian missiles make the logistics harder still. Which brings us to Russia's favorite winter tactic, deep strikes against Ukraine's energy grid and rail nodes, framed as shaping operations. In early December alone, Russia launched one of the largest mixed salvos of the year, a blizzard of drones and missiles aimed at infrastructure rather than trenches. The bombardment was impressive on paper, but the operational payoff is elusive. Knocking out transformers doesn't produce a breakthrough unless ground forces are ready and able to exploit disrupted rail timetables with tempo and mass. And that tempo is exactly what Russia cannot maintain. On the Pokrovsk Myrnohrad axis, Russia's effort looks like the winter offensive in miniature. Pressure, 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 and then a wall of small unit death. Ukrainian defenders have built a kill zone culture powered by cheap FPV drones that shadow every column. stalk every tree line, and shred the connective tissue of any attack that lingers too long on approach. The effect isn't cinematic, it's statistical. A battalion probing turns into a trickle, as each vehicle becomes a separate funeral. By the time surviving infantry arrive at the contact line, they're battered and blind, facing defenders who never stopped watching. Russia can still creep, but it can't run. Let's talk about the bulldozer tactic. Grind forward, claim a block or two, post the footage, repeat. Analysts continue to note that Russia is incurring significant losses for marginal territory around Pokrovsk. That's not opinion, it's the geometry of the operation. Flat approaches, predictable axes, short daylight, and defenders who've learned that drones are the cheapest artillery spotter in history. Grind is not the same as break. The winter offensive promised the latter and is delivering only the former. Meanwhile, Russia's information war goes into overdrive each time the front line slows. ISW's assessments, summarized by independent project Re-Russia, flag a consistent pattern of exaggerating gains to shape Western perceptions. It's cognitive warfare: sell inevitability, suppress aid, watch the front fray. That playbook worked better when Ukraine's ammo cupboards were emptier and donor politics messier. Today, it's being checked by a flood of open-source eyes and an internet where every claim meets a drone video, a geolocated crater, and a swarm of OSINT analysts with no time for bedtime stories. So if it's collapsing, you might ask, why are there still Russian gains? Good question. Tactical advances still happen. War is not binary, and Russia can still seize trenches, hamlets, and the occasional factory complex. But even Moscow's friends admit the pace slows as winter sets in. You can capture a street and still be losing the campaign if the cost to do so makes the next street unaffordable. An offensive is measured by momentum and depth, by whether the enemy line breaks and the railheads fall. Today we're seeing nibbling, not breaking. And Ukraine is not just absorbing, it's punching. Special operations forces continue to hit Russian logistics hubs and drone depots deep in occupied territories. Each depot destroyed isn't just a fiery clip. It's a gap in Russia's ability to sustain those nightly Shahed swarms that aim to freeze Ukrainian civilians into submission. Russia's winter bet hinges on terror strikes creating strategic effect. Ukrainian raids flip that bet by raising the cost of terror faster than the Kremlin can recoup it. Here's the military anatomy of the collapse. First, manpower quality. Russia's rush-trained mobilized troops are being fed into fights that demand seasoned NCOs and combined arms finesse. Second, the logistics lash. Refineries degraded, rail under surveillance, and a battlefield dotted with loitering munitions that punish any pause. Third, strategic incoherence. Massive deep strike campaigns sap Ukraine's grid, but do not translate into operational breakthroughs without synchronized ground exploitation. Fourth, narrative overreach. Each boast of encirclement that isn't borne out the next day erodes the credibility Moscow needs to deter Western aid. Stack those together, and you don't get collapse in a single moment. You get a campaign that trips, staggers, and keeps tripping until even modest objectives start to look Herculean. Let's walk the ground where this offensive was supposed to dazzle. Donbass in winter is a problem set, not a gift. Yes, the freeze can firm up mud for tracked vehicles, but daylight is short, warmth is rare, and the dronescape never sleeps. That means Russia's usual build a salvo then push rhythm has less time to breathe. You need armor massed at the right moment, under cover, with logistics humming and sappers clearing lanes. You need smoke that defeats thermal sights and a tempo that outruns quadcopters. Instead, you get columns stopped by a cheap FPV with a shaped charge, and platoons that can't stay concealed long enough to form a breach. The more Russia leans on drones to compensate, the more it runs into a defender that's been optimizing for this exact fight. Meanwhile, Ukraine's long-range fires rewrite the winter calculus. Rail choke points, oil depots, and repair yards don't burn with cinematic flair every night, but their loss echoes for weeks. Russia's armoured push is a machine. Ukraine is stripping out the belts and bearings in slow motion. When a refinery is degraded, it doesn't grow back by morning. When a maintenance hub loses specialised tooling, tanks break and stay broken. And when your offensive is measured in daily kilometers, every missing fuel train is a subtraction you feel at the next assault group's starting line. What about the Shahed and missile storms? In November and early December, Russia threw staggering numbers of one-way attack drones at Ukrainian infrastructure, a tactic meant to exhaust air defenses and plunge cities into darkness. It's ugly, it's cruel, and it forces Ukraine to spend interceptors it would rather save. But it is also a confession. If an army truly believes the front will crack, it spends its precision munitions on the front. When it spends them on apartment blocks and grid substations instead, it's chasing political panic, not preparing an armoured breakthrough. And that is what a failing offensive looks like. Lots of spectacle, not much exploitation. Now, a note of honesty. Collapsing doesn't mean over. Russia can still harm, pin, and capture. Ukraine can still take losses it can't easily replace. This war is a marathon through a minefield, not a sprint on a track. But the offensive, the promise that winter would be Moscow's ally, that Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk would fall in a cascade, that the line would finally buckle, that offensive is already losing its nutrients. The Kremlin's public boasts outpace its private ledgers. The maps inch, the morgues overflow. The correlation of forces moves slowly, but it moves. If you need a yardstick, follow the logistics. In any offensive worth the name, railheads get threatened, depots get overrun, and defenders get left holding empty ground. Today, we see defenders holding rail, Ukrainian strike teams disrupting depots in the rear, and Russian assaults that must reset after each small bite. The only thing making big miles right now is the propagandist's pen. Here's the part where we talk about morale, because it matters. On the Ukrainian side, the social contract for survival is hard and simple. Hold, innovate, hit back deep. On the Russian side, the social contract is foggier. Serve, obey, and hope the state remembers you if you don't come home. That's not a knock on Russian soldiers. It's a structural reality of a system that invents medals for body collection while hiding the body count. Defensive empires can fight long wars with that model. They cannot win fast offensives. And the information war, Russia blasts out encirclement like a magical word. But the modern battlefield is a ruthless fact-checker. If your cauldron doesn't exist, a dozen geolocators will tell the world before lunch. Independent analysts have called out this pattern. Inflate advances, seed doubt, and hope Western aid tapers. That tactic strains now because the exaggerations are too frequent and the facts too visible. Let's address a common counter-argument. Isn't Ukraine also strained? Yes, both sides are straining, but strain isn't symmetric. Ukraine's doctrine and kit are optimized for aerial ambush, FPV drones, precision howitzer strikes, and quick raids, while Russia's winter plan still wants armoured mass and sustained surges. Winter is supposed to favour the heavier force. Drones flip that script by punishing mass more than they punish agility. If you must bunch up to attack, you give the drone network a perfect target set. If you disperse, you lose the shock that an offensive needs. That is the paradox eating the Russian winter plan from inside. Meanwhile, evidence of Ukrainian reach keeps surfacing. A depot blown here, a launch site wrecked there, a drone factory quietly erased. Each success degrades Russia's ability to wage the kind of bombardment designed to induce blackouts. In war, persistence matters. When your nightly strikes require a web of launchers, warehouses, technicians, and truck convoys, you become a very large, very noisy machine. And noisy machines are the easiest to find. So yes, expect more videos of Russian flags planted on shattered factory roofs. Expect more boasts of operational encirclements that later shrink into tactical pincers. Expect more missile nights where the grid groans and firefighters work until dawn. Expect pain, but do not expect the winter miracle Moscow promised. The ingredients aren't in the pantry. Trained NCOs to orchestrate complex breaches, refineries humming without interruption, a drone-proof sky, and reserves fresh enough to exploit success. Without those, winter isn't a battering ram. It's just cold. 3 quick truths to carry with you. First, a successful winter offensive doesn't announce itself with statistics. It reveals itself when railways fall quiet and the front moves miles, not meters. We are not there. Second, terror campaigns are a tax on defenders, but they are also a confession of offensive weakness when not paired with ground exploitation. We are seeing the terror, not the exploitation. Third, propaganda keeps the home front warm, but only logistics keeps an offensive warm. Russian logistics are being chilled at the source. General Winter didn't switch sides this year. He just called in sick, and the drones took his job. Russia's accountants must be the most depressed people on earth. Every time they budget for a tank push, a $500 FPV turns it into a crater with opinions. And somewhere in Donbass, a Ukrainian operator is explaining to a new recruit that, yes, the joystick is your artillery now. Welcome to the future. The bottom line is as stark as the season. What Russia sold as a winter hammer is swinging like a rubber mallet. It makes noise, it leaves bruises, but it's not breaking bone. The Kremlin can keep pounding, but the fracture it needs isn't appearing. Strategy is making the map smaller for Moscow, not larger. And in a war of wills, maps and morale are everything. So here's the truth, stripped of spin. The winter offensive is collapsing because it depends on fuel Russia can't reliably refine, on momentum its manpower can't sustain, on terror strikes that don't translate into breakthroughs, and on narratives that dissolve under drone video. That doesn't mean the nights will be quiet or the casualty lists short. It means the strategic picture is drifting away from Moscow's winter's fix everything fantasy. Which leaves a question for all of us watching this from warm rooms and bright screens. When a regime gambles on winter to do what its army cannot, how many more seasons will it burn through before it admits the weather isn't the weapon it used to be?